So I go down to Florida. I didn't have a pedal board or anything because they were just like, yeah, we'll provide the amps. And at this point, this predates any like gear obsession things that have probably corrupted my mind at this point. But my buddy, his name was William Casey, but he's Bubba to us. So like Bub goes down with us, and we're all having a good time. And I had taken an acoustic guitar and just to kind of pick up chicks at the pool or whatever, just like to have and play, not intending to play it in the competition. I go into the competition. All these guys had these big like loopers. One guy had a rack with an Eventide in it and all this harmonization and all this. I was just like, what am I? I've got a chord. I'm playing through that Marshall over there. I'm gonna got clean and dirty, and that's what I'm gonna use. And like these guys got all this stuff on them, I was stressing out. And I mean, like it didn't really bother me until that point that I felt underprepared, and that's an ugly feeling, all right. And so Bub was like, just play your acoustic for your freestyle, because the contest was like 20 backing tracks. You could choose one and you had to play to a backing track. Then you had 2 minutes just to play by yourself. And the freestyle really is where a lot of guys shined, because like the Merle Travis thing or like the slapping and tapping, that stuff really is cool in a solo environment. So I just took my acoustic on stage and plugged it in for my freestyle and kind of haphazardly made an arrangement of an old fiddle tune like on the spot with a cool little intro or whatever. And it ended up being working out that I didn't bring anything. I went so far in the minimalist approach, and I remember the judges saying something like, yeah, it was so impressive to see a guy come out there with a chord. And I was like, I didn't know any better.
it's the classic Cinderella story, and the quintessential spiritual music lesson, that is, if you can't make music with in the simplest of environments, you probably can't make music in the most complex ones, right? And
it's a great thing that I have to remind myself often. I really do, because now I'm you can't really see my stuff, but I've got elaborate rig, and like we've worked together. You've seen I've learned a lot from guys like Andy Timmons and like Tone and all the things, cable length, and like now I'm living. But I have to remind myself often. It's like what Tony Stark says to Peter Parker. He's like, if you're nothing without the suit, then you don't deserve to have the suit.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a good thing to always just have on your, on your computer monitor, your workstation. Be like, this, your music doesn't come from stuff,
Right.
I feel like a hypocrite saying that. Here I am wearing a Sir shirt with a wall full of Sir. But the truth is like, man, these are tools, and you have to remember that, like, an artist has paintbrushes and colors, but you still have to have the creativity, and that's got to be at the forefront. And I'm the most guilty at times of chasing the wrong things, and I have to remind myself, a chord and a guitar and the truth can go a long way.
It's so interesting to talk about this, because as a bass player, of course, traditionally we aren't necessarily as reliant on amps and pedals and things like that as most guitar players are. And as I started to get into pedals and effects and things like that coming up as a player, it was this weird balancing act, because I would have this awesome affinity for this particular pedal or something that did something to my sound that I wanted it to be on all the time, right? But then I would go on, maybe I'd be at a jam session or something, and it's like you said, you just have a cable in your bass or your guitar, and you're just plugging in. You got to kind of represent yourself and hopefully communicate something musically meaningful while you're doing that. And I went back and forth so much between, okay, I want to use these tools to craft my tone, but at the same time I don't want to be dependent on them. And it's really hard to kind of find it's hard to find sort of like a central ground in between. I can't imagine for a guitar player, because so many of you, the amp choice or it's such a big part of things. Like,
you couldn't put Eddie Van Halen into Brent Mason's amp and Brent Mason's into Eddie's amp and expect the same results. What will happen, because both of them are who they are, is it will shock their systems into manipulating the instrument to working in a different way. And you can look at it through Ed's catalog and all the different things he did, playing Spanish fly on a gut string or using a cleaner tone for cathedral and the volume swells. And you can look at Brent and all the myriad of things he's ever done. And you kind of glazed over something that's really important. You're like, when I'm at a jam.
Yeah.
I love those moments because those are inopportune. I think it's often for a lot of times guys will be at a bar, at a club gig, maybe their friends are playing and your friends will see, hey, come up and play something, come play Little Wing or Crossroads or whatever, industry standard fare of tune. And you'll be up there and somebody will hand you something that's not yours and not your pedals. And I usually just look at them like, which one's clean, which one's dirty? Okay, those are the two colors that I can use, and usually it's just one button that will do clean or dirty, and I don't touch anything else. And it shocks the system into focusing on, hey man, all of these other licks and tricks and things that might work under a lot of compression or gain, they're not going to work. So you have to change that, especially with guitarists. Gosh, a guy's rig on Broadway might have a tube screamer, versus a guy's rig in LA, which is probably going to be an amp with a lot of gain on it. You know what I mean? Just like the difference in approach, or even guys that ride the balance in between, like a Josh Smith or a Timmons that have, myriad of different tones and fuzzes. So yeah, when you're asked to be driving somebody else's car, I love that feeling, and it's awful. It's an awful thing because but it's very important. And I think that's a reason it ties into one of the questions I get a lot about gear, which is, which guitar is your favorite? What amp's the best? What do I need to do? And it's like, if you look behind me, this thing does a clean thing, that thing does it, this thing does a distortion thing. All of these are different. There's a hollow body that's right out of shot, and they all have different. I never set things up to behave the same way. Like, I use thicker strings on my more jazzier, bluesier type of guitars. I use hybrid sets on things I'm doing. So it's like I intentionally make the guitars feel different, so I won't go for the things if I'm playing like a shred machine like that red guitar, I'm going to go for the things that are like the bubbly licks, wide intervallic stuff. But when I play that like 335 thing, I want to try to pretend I'm an adult. You know what I mean? Don't go past the 15th fret. There's nothing there for you. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
And the intention of like having the guitar tell you what to do, it's actually quite rewarding, in my opinion. And I love playing other guys' guitars because it's like, how do I sound like me when I'm not on my stuff? You know what I mean?